demonstration in Washington. As I said, we've done this before. We've been to this. And
isn't necessarily the best place to start. In fact, I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction. That is
you condemn white supremacy. And he fumbled around, didn't say anything. I said, how about the Proud Boys? And he said, well,
Ronald Reagan was 2 months into his presidency when John Hinckley Jr. blew a $20 million. About blowing up the White House.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look what happened.
I want to take this message to talk to your viewers real quick about the story, the conversation we need to have now. The BOP is wasting lots of tax dollars in frivolous spending, and We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Barry Ramey. I am the host of the new show, The American Rising, on the War Boy Studio Network. And this is a segment of our show called WeTheJ6ers.com, where I'm the co-founder along with my beautiful fiance. And our goal and mission right now is to showcase and highlight the stories of the men and women behind January 6th that for 4 years and longer, in some instances, their voices were silent. And while they were silenced, a narrative was spun in the mainstream media that these individuals, in my personal opinion, were labeled one of the most dangerous labels that can be done in the political realm, and that was domestic terrorist. These men and women were silenced from the media. They were not allowed to tell their side of the story, and all the while, this narrative was placed upon them. And that is our mission with WeTheJ6ers.com, is to collectively showcase the men and women, their stories, and let America finally be able to judge with their own eyes and ears who these men and women really are. We rest confident that at the end of the day that maybe you don't agree with all of them politically, but we hope that we can come to a communal agreement that the ability for a political party to label its opposition as domestic terrorist and then send the Department of Justice after them, well, that's a place in American society that I don't think we ever need to tread or be at. And we find ourselves here. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring up a very special guest as far as WeTheJ6ers.com, because not only is he was part of one of the most scandalous and prosecutorial misconducted trials in American history. He's also one of our speakers because of his ability to articulate his points and because his goals in life are bigger than January 6th. That is one point that I'd like to bring up. We are not here to tell our stories to generate sympathy or victimhood for January 6ers. We're here to tell our stories so we can go forward as a nation to make sure the Department of Justice cannot be weaponized against presidents, their constituents, and supporters, or against the American people on either side of the political aisle. Without any further ado, Mr. Zach Rehl, how are you, my friend?
How you doing, brother? Good to see you again.
Good to see you, and you've also got a show on the War Boy Studio that's killing it right now. We've taken the time to add a backdrop and put some shit into our show. You've done nothing, and yet you're killing it. You're beating all of us. So proof that it's not the pencil; it's how you write your name.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, and yeah, I'm still working on getting the background and everything done, and yada yada. I still got you have a badass entry. The intro show there that you got going on.
Yeah, that's Jesus Rivera that did that, man. I can take no credit. That guy's awesome. Another J6er.
Oh yeah. Okay. Might need to hit him up.
So yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was money well spent. He's well worth it. He's a passionate person, very patriotic individual as well. I want to get into the brass tacks of everything, because now you've told your story. You're out. You're commuted. You're not pardoned. You're also a veteran and a loyal, dedicated husband. And you were labeled a domestic terrorist. That's what the media said about Zachary Rehl. and they accused you of being one of the 500 tips of the spear, leading the charge to overthrow the United States government. That narrative could not be further from the truth. So who is Zach Rehl, and who were you on that day? Why did you show up to the Capitol on January 6th on a personal level?
Well, yeah, first of all, Zach Rehl is my name. I'm obviously I was Proud Boy president. I was also part of the leadership team with Enrique Terrio, Ethan Nardine, and Joe Biggs, and a few other people. But we were honestly trying to do everything we can to just protect our members and reduce any potential stupidity could happen. I mean, because sometimes Proud Boys, they get drunk and they might show up to an event, and you gotta be there, make sure everybody's in line and everything like that, and not do anything stupid. We don't want our guys getting arrested or stabbed. And in December there was a guy who got stabbed, and that's what basically we created the Ministry of Self-Defense for, and we were basically doing a different operation. We were just doing like a smaller group of guys where we're trying to just test run to see how we could just make sure we could keep control of the amount of guys we have. And, if we were able to be successful with, keeping our guys protected and out of trouble, then we were going to grow our team a little bit bigger for the next future events. And it was always about future national events, but the government just blatantly lied about what the MOSD was. Like every single video and every single message that talked about what the MOSD was, the government said we were lying. So like we had it, and this was played at trial too. We had a literal group meeting with the MOSD members and the leadership, where the leadership was talking. I was part of the leadership, and it was all live stream, it was all recorded, and we're sitting there telling people, you guys are, we're not doing these events to look for problems. We're not trying to look for fights. Sometimes you got to defend yourself against Antifa. That's something that we've always done. Trump supporters have done the same thing. Anytime anybody's ever went to these events, it was always to, at people like geared up or anything. It wasn't gearing up to fight cops. Nobody ever tried fighting cops ever. People geared up to protect themselves from Antifa, and January 6th was no different. So, the government threw out these cherry-picked quotes from random chats. Usually, if there is a questionable comment by somebody, it wasn't from us. It was usually a confidential human source that the FBI was paying, and that's another thing that there was like a big egregious problem with our trials, that we were denied the right to even invite these CHSs up on the stand and question them. There was only one the government let us bring up, and that one was there on January 6th, and he was actually, causing issues for the police that day.
That wasn't Pertino, because he wasn't there.
Pertino wasn't even there. Yeah, he was recovering from stab wounds still, but he ended up being their star witness, and they had this guy get up on his stand and just run his mouth and just talk trash about the character of all of us, and that was his main point. The main point of the government with Jeremy Bertino wasn't. He didn't even say there was a plan. He never even said there was a plan. His job was to get on the stand and just attack our character and attack the character of the Proud Boys, and just inflame the jury's emotions about us, so that way they would convict us just based on anger alone. And he was successful at it, and that's unfortunate. But that's a topic for another day. That guy, you want to talk about a sleazebag?
Well, I mean, that's it seems like that's indicative of how a lot of our cases went. I shared with, I believe it was Billy Cressman I was talking to last week, and one thing that was in my PSR, for those that don't know, the pre-sentencing report, when you get sentenced to prison, they give an analysis on your character and your behavior that day. And one thing, and this is not exclusive to me, this happened to pretty much every J6er. They put language in my PSR that myself, along with the Proud Boys, were circling around the Capitol, actively looking for weak points in the perimeter. That is so far from the truth that, first of all, there was no fucking perimeter. They had two places with bike racks, not even bolted to the ground. And the notion that this was this organized strategic plan, there's so much evidence against that narrative that finally we're able to showcase. Just, my question is, who's still listening? We know it's nobody in fucking Congress, but fortunately we have an administration that's going to do something about it. So I mean, that goes to your point that the narrative that they created, the conspiracy is actually their creation of us being domestic terrorists. That's the real conspiracy here, how easily it was done and how easily it can still be done in the future, and how we got to stop it. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. And going on your point with that, that's another thing that they were really good at. We were activists, and like a lot of the things we talked about and the marching. Yeah, we marched around all over DC that day. We started marching before President Trump was doing his speech. We thought we had time to go march, do some chants, because that's what activists do. They go do activist stuff. They wave flags, blah, 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 do chants. And they used all that against us. So literally all we were doing was marching around the city. And they're like, oh, they're marching around the Capitol looking for weak points. No, we weren't. We're doing the same thing we did at every single event we've ever been at. We gather to a spot. We get together. Once everybody shows up, we march around town a little bit, do some chants, whose streets, our streets, or F Antifa, whatever. And, then we go back to, where we started, or we go disperse and start drinking and getting drunk. I mean, most of us left the Capitol area around 2 or 3 o'clock, and we're already back to our hotels getting smashed. I think I left at 3:20.
My attorney actually asked me towards the end of wrapping up the whole this shit. She was a little on the liberal side. She was very clear about that, but my attorney was a badass, and I had the utmost respect for her. She's a warrior. And she asked me, she's like, what happened that day, as far as planning and the Proud Boys? And I said, look, I witnessed most of these guys before Trump was done speaking go back to their Airbnb to eat leftover pizza from the night before, because that was more entertaining than anything else going on around them. So if there was a plan somewhere, 90% of the guys didn't get the fucking memo.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's the part that had me just angry sitting through trial, because like I know what we were, what we were doing that day, and like none of it was what they're saying, and the fact that they would in one hand say that we're so dumb, we're a bunch of dumb idiot rednecks or whatever. And mind you, I'm from the city and I got a couple degrees, so I'm not an idiot. But they say everybody on the right is a bunch of redneck idiots and yada yada yada. But then on the other hand, they were to say, oh, they came up with this plan that was so stealth and strategic that nobody knew about it, and they were able to execute it without saying a word to anybody. And it was like, what? That doesn't even make any sense at all. Like,
the greatest intelligence in the agencies in the world missed that one.
Yeah, and they had this tools theory that they used in our trial, and basically they said, with the 5 of us, we used everybody there, anybody that did something or fought back in defense, in self-defense against any of the cops or whatever. If you did anything, they said that we used that person as our tool, and it's just like. They told the jury that we didn't have to actually have said anything to them. If they did something, then it was our fault because we wanted it to happen. So it's just like that. What? Like, how do you convict something of, something you think they might want to have happen, but didn't actually say it to anybody? It sounds crazy, but that's exactly what they said during trial.
Well, January 6ers got to know what it feels like to be a ham sandwich in America, because like they say, they can indict a ham sandwich, and it is true. It is not hyperbole. They can present a case behind closed doors that make you look like the Joker from Batman. And if people believe it, they will vote to indict you. You have no say-so in it. You don't get to meet these people. It happens behind closed doors. And in my personal opinion, it's so fucking unconstitutionally un-American but we just look the other way and allow this egregious process to play out, and then wonder why the federal government has a 98.7% conviction rating.
Oh yeah. I think a big part of it too is the fact that the Democrats basically created about 80 years worth of laws in the federal government. And they also, they put a lot of things in place that allowed them to basically abuse the system. So, a lot of people didn't realize this, but the government was able to interpret the laws however they see fit. Like one of the main reasons why the judges would deny almost every single motion that defense would put forward is because the government would just say, no, this is what this law means.
Yep.
And the judge would have to agree with them.
Yeah.
And that's not how our system would work. So,
right.
and
Sidney Powell's book, License to Lie. I mean, it was almost a precursor for everything we went through.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just wild to me that the very people that are prosecuting us were also the same people interpreting the laws how they seem fit, and it's, like I said, that's why they have such a high conviction rate. It's not because they're good. In fact, all the prosecutors on our trial were morons. Like I could have out argued any of them myself. And one of my biggest regrets sometimes is not representing myself. But that's again another topip for another day. But like I said,
Brandon Fellows did it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And
kudos to him.
I salute him for that, man. But even so, I still would have lost. I would have just felt a little better about some of the things I would have brought up during trial that the lawyers didn't want to bring up. And, that's another issue too. They're all controlled by the bar. And, the defense attorneys don't want to trash the prosecutors because prosecutors are attorneys too. And then you got the judges that are sticking up for the prosecutors because guess what? The judges used to be lawyers as well. So literally, the very people that control the bar too hated Donald Trump. So the very people that controlled all the prosecutors in all the J6 cases hated Trump. So it's like, and that's why nobody could really get many right wing lawyers. There was probably 5 total, and those very few ones they beat some serious charges, and hats off to them, but. They couldn't win all the way, and nobody could. Not with that jury,
People really need to sit back and think about what a jury of your peers actually means. Okay, if you commit some kind of felony, let's say armed robbery or something heinous like that, okay, you're still being judged by a jury of your peers because you're being accused of doing something egregiously wrong and felonious. Okay, but your peers are able to look at you as a citizen first. When you're talking about something that's politicized or political, people that's how they identify. That's how they identify as human. Albeit wrong, you're human. You're not a Democrat. You're not a Republican. You're a fucking human. But that doesn't change the notion that people believe that's who they are as a person. They can't just turn that off in the midst of going to trial when they're asked to turn that off and look at these people from a fair and unbiased point of view. You can't do that with politics because that's the definition of politics. We're trying to say that my way of thinking is right and yours is wrong. And that's our whole existence with one another. And that's what it's become. So we didn't have a jury of our peers. We had people that in 96% voted for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. They thought we were the devil.
Yeah. And to add on to that point, just a little backstory on our jury selection. Most people don't know this, but when the January 6th House Committee propaganda fest was going on, all their major hearings, all their major public hearings were perfectly aligned with all of our biggest and most important hearings for our trial, and at least during pretrial. And then when they were releasing their final report, they released it right during jury selection. So every single juror that walked in that door when we were vetting, they already had a preconceived notion about us because the January 6th House Committee completely slandered us. Said the Proud Boys are responsible for everything, which is BS. Like we weren't, and but they said it, and the judge would sit here and go, "Oh well, you think you could be fair and impartial?" They're like, "Yeah." Meanwhile, they're Democrats. Like there was one person who worked on the Biden administration, the actual administration, and there's like, yeah, I could be fair and impartial. Like, no, you can't. Like you're biased. You're political. You walked in this door. Half the jurors said that they thought Proud Boys were Nazis and white supremacists and all this and everything, and that's a lie because all of our witnesses came in. We had black guys, Asian guys, Jewish guy came in to be a witness on our behalf. All Proud Boys.
Yeah, but we're really doing the white nationalist thing totally wrong.
I mean, never mind the chairman's a freaking Afro-Cuban, you know what I mean?
And we don't let him live that down. We make fun of him for it every day. So,
worst white supremacists on the planet. I mean, let me tell you. But they project. They're projecting what they are. I mean, that's the oldest communist rule in the book is call your enemy what you are. And
Stalin 101. He said this multiple times in speeches, loud speeches that he gave. So
Right. So anytime the Democrats are calling something on the right, do a little digging, and you'll probably find out that they're hiding their own background.
And
Literally.
we have so many examples to why this is true, what you just said. So, I mean, it's not, I want to go to, well, first, before I get to the more, I want to talk about some of the prosecutorial misconduct that you witnessed in your trial that we know we could talk for hours on that alone. But I do want to bring up, a lot of people are just now finding out that one of your jurors, people know, if people follow the Proud Boys and know that our stances on things in the political realm, that we are very staunchly against drag queen story hour for kids. We do not like it. We're never going to like it. And you can hate us and call us all the transphobes and bigots you want. Don't care. Not going to be pleased with it when it comes to our towns. One of your jurors was an organizer for the drag queen story hour in Washington, D.C. Is this correct?
Yes, and he actually organized a drag queen story hour right down the street from the courthouse during the middle of the trial. So he was literally stirring the pot and just causing headlines for things during trial. I mean, and of course the Proud Boys showed up to protest the drag queen story hour, because that's what they did all over the country during our trial and before trial or whatever. And that was no different. And like I said, they made big headlines out of it. I think one of the Proud Boys got attacked by a group of people, and that made a bunch of headlines. And then after that, they accused they. Now I don't know if this is ever true or not, but the jury said that somebody was following them. On their way to court, whatever. And that definitely wasn't a Proud Boy, but they made a big thing about this during the sealed hearings. They sealed the hearings, and the jurors were just like, we're not going to be intimidated. We think we know who did it, and we're not going to be intimidated by these people, and blah, blah. This is what they said in the sealed hearings. And it was so right there in the middle of trial, you have these radical lefties on the jury stand who provoked a protest and then attacked a Proud Boy who was counter protesting their event. And now all of a sudden they have complete justification to have animosity towards us in the middle of our own trial. It was a complete setup.
It was strategic. And this is the epitome of what WeTheJ6ers.com hope to travel across the country through our voices of our speakers and showcase these type of strategic things that were done to you in your trial. Like you said, the J6 sham committee and their strategically placed aired timing show trials right when they're doing jury selection. This type of interference from the government in any type of criminal proceeding or civil proceeding is so unconstitutional. It should not be allowed to happen. And it is good to see, although very few and far between, the very few real liberals left, like Alan Dershowitz and some of these other people, Jordan Peterson, they're speaking out against this, because it is wrong. It is legally and constitutionally wrong for the government to be able to weaponize itself against you before your trial under the notion that you're innocent unless proven guilty. But we all know that's bullshit, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And the very interesting thing is, like, another thing that we got our hands on in the middle of the trial were internal messages with the FBI that they're having between each other. And there's a lot of juicy things in these messages between these FBI agents. But two I'm going to bring up right now. One was they're talking about what they can do to prove their case, because they didn't have evidence of our case, the charges against us, a year after we were all arrested. So we're sitting in jail for a year at this point. They don't even have the evidence for what they're accusing us of, but we're still denied bail, everything, and it's just like, how you can't arrest people when you don't have evidence of the crime.
And you're still labeled as a domestic terrorist while they're putting together the case to prove that you're being treated that and labeled that.
And it was just a complete denial of our due process rights. And the other one that really stands out, and this one's not personal, this is about our case in general, because there are some personal things that were in those messages. I'll get into it later, but they accused us of deleting messages. They said, oh, there's probably a plan. They probably deleted the messages. And they're saying this under oath in front of the jury. And the jury believed it. The jury, after our trial, said, well, we didn't see the evidence of, what they did, because they probably deleted the messages. But a nice little nugget that we found in these private FBI conversations was they said, oh, we got Enrique's phone. We have all their chats and all the messages, and nothing was deleted, not a single thing. So they knew all the chats were there. They knew we didn't delete everything, and they knew they had everything, but they still continued during our trial to lie over and over and over and over again and accuse us of shit that we didn't do. So that was another thing we didn't do. We didn't delete text messages. There was no plan.
Well, it's funny because, again, another thing that America's just finding out is about this 1776 returns document that was somehow found on Enrique's phone, but was never opened. They even admitted in your trial that it was never opened by Enrique. He never looked at it. It was obviously planted there. And this isn't a conspiracy. I mean, just look at the evidence that what was entered into the record. And I mean, this is the passion. This is the motivation behind the passion. We have got to make sure this does not happen in the future, ladies and gentlemen. Agree
100%. And the thing is with that 1776 document too, I never seen it until the middle of the trial. And the title of it is so scary, 1776 returns. But when you actually read the document, it's actually talking about a peaceful protest that they've done countless times over the last 100 years. And none of the protests involved being at the Capitol. So it was just like that document, as scary as it sounds, had nothing to do with the Capitol anyway.
They were talking about doing sit-ins.
Yeah, it was talking about locking arms and doing a sit-in and a couple other buildings around the Capitol.
Good luck getting Proud Boys to do that.
Yeah, like we would have never done that anyway. But that's the stuff that the left does. They do those kind of protests. But again, like it's just another thing. They pushed the title of that document, made it try to sound so scary, and it wasn't scary at all. Like and like I said, didn't mention the Capitol, but still they convicted us and kept talking about it. But
yeah, what would you say was the most nefarious thing that you witnessed the prosecution or the Department of Justice, FBI do in the Proud Boys trial that was so blatantly deliberate?
Well, I would say there's probably two. One of them, and I guess this kind of they go hand in hand, to be honest with you. They withheld a lot of confidential human sources from us, FBI informants from us that were embedded in the organization or embedded in the marching group on that day. And I found proof of they were only admitted to like 4, before trial, but I found proof of upwards of 17 in the middle of the trial. And they were just like, the prosecutor was just, oh, we didn't know anything about that. And it's like, well, you read all these messages. How did you miss this? So there was an informant, FBI informant prior to January 6th who basically came out and told people that he was an FBI informant. He ended up getting kicked out of the Proud Boys and everything. But he told me in a message one night, I guess he was like really drunk, and he told me.
Was this the guy from Missouri, from the Kansas City?
No. I didn't know about that guy until midway through pretrial detention. This guy named Danny Mack, who's out of New Jersey. So I actually was friends with the guy because we did rallies a bunch of times, and then ended up kicking him out after he said he was an informant. But I was trying to pry a little information out of him one night, and I was like, so like, oh, you're the only one, or is there more? Like, how many are in the Proud Boys or whatever? He's like, oh, I know of 17. Just confirmed. I know it's 17 across the organization. I was like, oh wow. And I forgot about it because I got arrested shortly afterwards, and I didn't get to see any of my discovery until the trial, like years later. So I'm going through all these messages and I'm trying to find anything that could help our case. And I came through that. It was still there. I was like, oh wow. So here's a FBI informant who admitted in text message to me that there's 17. So I showed that to my lawyer, and the lawyers went nuts, and they're like, well, where's the rest? You guys only told us about 4. And they were always lying about, their knowledge on these confidential human sources. I mean, we had a CHS that we were calling as a witness. We didn't know they were a CHS until the day before we were calling this person as a witness. And then the prosecution goes, oh, by the way, that witness you're calling that you were talking, your clients were talking to for months on end, that's an FBI informant. Just wanted to let you guys know.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And it's crazy. It really is. But the other thing, and like I said, this goes hand in hand with the CHS stuff, is all the withholding of evidence, the Brady violations and everything. I mean, they withheld software programs from us that they had the whole time that would have allowed us to show full message strings with replies to who's replying to who. And it would have put context into a lot of the comments you might have seen in the media, but things that they're able to essentially take out of context and just write their own storyline or narrative with. But also with videos, all the videos that were exculpatory for all of us, the 44,000 hours and, things of that nature.
I mean, they still have some of that video sealed that they're not releasing still to this very moment. It is a little strange because people need to understand that none of us, you could probably make the case for maybe 5 to 10 J6ers who had priors and been in the system before. Okay. Mm-hmm. But most of us did not meet the qualifications to have pretrial release denied to us. But it was so important for the prosecution to get our pretrial releases denied, our bail denied, because they wanted to take away the ability to communicate with our lawyers. Because, like Zach said, they didn't have a case; they were creating it. We were innocent while they proved us guilty. So it was so important to keep our bail from us because. Again, it is a lot harder to work on your case when you're a lawyer when you're in a fucking jail cell. And in a lot of our cases, hundreds of miles away from our attorneys.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just that too. It was so they could do things to financially break you, maybe ruin your life. That was another thing that the FBI was gleefully bragging about in these messages that we got during trial. They wanted to ruin my life. They're hoping my wife was going to leave me. They wanted my house to foreclose, and they actively did things to do that. They took my military benefits from me with the VA, and they did this before I was even charged with seditious conspiracy. But they used the seditious conspiracy to permanently ban me from having my benefits, and that's something Joe Biggs suffers from too. We weren't able to get them back because we weren't pardoned, and that's one of the reasons why we're pushing so hard to raise awareness to Trump to hopefully pardon the rest of us, because half of us are military vets that are being deprived of health care and benefits that we're entitled to and we earned.
Well, look, I mean, obviously I am not an attorney. I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express the other night, so I am qualified for this opinion. I believe I looked into the laws, and once you get pardoned, the prosecution and the district attorney's office can make moves to seal a lot of evidence that wasn't and was used in your trial. Enrique wasn't there. That was an easy one. You guys, by keeping yours open, they have access to all of Enrique's stuff anyway. And I think the ultimate goal is to prove to the American public how nefarious, illegal, and unconstitutional the indictments were against you and the Oath Keepers. And it's inevitably going to happen. I believe that your guys are going to get pardoned, but they need access to be able to show who the people culpable was in setting up this false narrative against you, the American people. And they need access to everything to be able to show. So I think that's why you were commuted, to keep the case open, to be able to prove that there was some bad shit that happens. And I think also that's going to be used to hopefully free the Wolverine guys from Michigan, because there's not much difference in their situation as to yours.
Yeah, hey, I'll tell you what, that's the first time I heard that theory, and that makes a lot of sense. It really does make a lot of sense. And I hope that's the case, because, I know Trump wants to, I know he wants to get to the bottom of this, because he's part of the blame. They're blaming him just as much as they're blaming us, and not a lot of people know this, but there is an active DC civil case still going. And the 5 of us and some of the Oath Keepers are co-defendants with President Trump. And it's crazy.
It is. It's absolutely insane.
It's 7 Capitol police officers. Some of them were the ones that testified and lied under oath at some of our trials, and the rest of them were at the January 6th House committees. But the fact that there's probably a couple thousand Capitol police officers who were there that day, and the left always like to go, 140 were injured. It's like, okay, 140 were injured. Why isn't 140 of them onto this lawsuit? There's only 7. Tells you everything you need to know about that lawsuit. It's politically motivated, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So,
well, that's why I always try to tell people, and I'm very honest and open about, yes, I did get into a physical altercation with a Capitol police officer. I don't condone my behavior, but I don't regret what happened, for the simple fact that I was sick of watching people being assaulted, my fellow citizens right in front of me. But my point on that is that the office there, I was charged with 2, and I am guilty of 1, but I am not guilty of the second, but doesn't negate the fact that I was charged with it. The officer Riggleman, that I got into a physical altercation that I am guilty of, he came to my trial and he could have smoked me. He could have Mike Fanoned me. He could have got on that stand. He could have said, boo hoo hoo, I'm so injured. I'm so devastated. My life is over. He didn't do that. He got on the stand and said, I don't know what happened. Shit was crazy. Washed it out. I worked the rest of the day. Didn't go to the hospital. He didn't have to do that. He could have done something else and they would have believed him. The judge would have believed him. So I have to think that he is probably one of the many other officers that aren't on that lawsuit for the reasons knowing that January 6th was some bullshit and it wasn't MAGA's fault.
Yeah, it probably was. Like you said, that the fact that only 7 Capitol Police officers are on that just tells you the political nature of it. It's all you need to know. I mean, but like I've met, when we were CPAC, I mean, I met a couple Capitol Police officers, and they were actually telling us that they retired because they weren't going to sit there with a straight face and just put up with the lies being told about January 6th. They thought it was disgusting, and rightfully
Good.
so. And I mean, it's disgusting that that's even a thing. We have to have police officers retire because their government's telling them to lie about what happened during an event.
Yeah.
But it's kind of what we're dealing with. Another thing I want to point out, what a Capitol Police officer said during our trial, this right here should have just practically tossed the whole thing for everybody. It was one of the police chiefs. I forget his name, but I could get the name for you.
Sund?
He said, who?
Sund, S-U-N-D.
I don't know if it's Sund. I'll find out. I'll get back to you on it. But yeah, he gets on a stand and he said that after the first quote breach of the building, when people first got into the building, that's what he called it. He said that after that, the Capitol Police were all ordered to stand down and open all the doors and let people in because they didn't want to piss the crowd off any further. So when I went in 45 minutes later, I was perfectly legal within my rights to go in that damn building. We were authorized at that point, 45 minutes later, to go into that building. And that's why people went into the building like they did. Like by the time I went in, there was hundreds of people in there. But they still, at the same time, the prosecution said that I led the charge into the building. How do you lead the charge into a building 45 minutes later after the police have said that it's okay for you to go in? So that's just another blatant, egregious lie that they made, and that it does hold a jury. And another one of the things we had to deal with. It's just crazy. So
yeah. And again, I will keep saying this, that these are the types of things that we want to expose, not to create pity or a sense of victimhood around us and our stories. We want to change it in the future so it can't happen to anybody, even you fucking Democrats. So, I honestly, I can speak for myself. I know, I rest confident knowing that a lot of the men and the women I associate with feel the same way, that if this was being done to the left, we would not be okay with it. And I wish that we had more people on the left that felt, and put themselves in our shoes, because we're putting ourselves in everyone's shoes, and we don't want this to happen again.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's they run off a mentality as do as I say, not as I do. I mean, they're always doing what they accuse us of. I mean, you remember the Kavanaugh hearings?
Yeah,
sure, we all remember
Stephen
that.
Colbert. I mean, come on, the list goes on and on. No arrest.
Look,
I mean, Matthew Graves gives 48 hours community service to a guy that punches a female Capitol Police officer in the face on camera during a pro-Palestinian Hamas riot. He gets 48 hours community service, but we get sentenced. The FBI sent at us and sent to prison. Yeah,
the absolute book thrown at you, and then some. And I say and then some because the 1512 charge wasn't even designed for a riot. It was designed for document destruction after the Enron scandal, and yet somehow they managed to throw us in prison indefinitely without trial. And
judges went along with this. Yeah.
But those same exact judges are working around the clock to free these illegals who aren't supposed to be here in the first place. And it's crazy. But
yeah, I mean, it really says something, the hills that the Democrats and their constituents choose to die on. It's mind-blowing. And fortunately, I confidently can say I feel that the American people are waking up. There's kind of an American rising, if you will, of even Democrats saying enough is enough. This is fucking stupid. You guys are retarded. Sorry, but it is what it is.
It's true. I think CNN released a poll not too long ago, and they quickly moved on from it, but it was something like the Democrats only have like a 35% approval rating. It's like their lowest in like 80 years or something like that.
Yeah, my question is, who the fuck is that 35%?
Probably Antifa types, the communists.
Yeah.
Them.
What color hair do they have, and how many cats do they own?
Yes, exactly. They're not hard to pick.
No, they're really. It's really not. You So now you're home. You're Philadelphia. You're a Philly cat through and through.
That's right.
You've experienced
Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, I know. The only American city that behaves like UK soccer hooligans that riots when they win. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
So you've been getting doxxed. You're still under attack. You're not allowed to live a normal life because leftists in Philadelphia refuse to do that. What's that been like for you and your family?
Well, it's a little rough because like number one, it's hard to find work, but like number two, not even lying. I was just told by my neighbors the other day or yesterday that there's little signs on telephone poles around my neighborhood. It says Zachary Rehl of Port Richmond is a terrorist, and they're posting this stuff in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like I get out, as whatever commuted. I'm not causing anything. I'm not doing any harm. I'm not antagonizing these people, but I live rent free in their head. So they're posting stuff all over the place, and they just can't stop thinking about me. The fact that I'm sitting here in this liberal cesspool, they hate it. They despise it. It drives them nuts. And this is how they act out. One of the ways, try taunting me in my own neighborhood. But honestly, we laugh at it. We think they're all a joke. So it's just like the fact, they are. I'm living rent free in their head. I don't wake up and think about them, but they wake up and think about me.
Yeah, you had to be told that there was posters of you on your telephone poles by your house.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm not looking at whatever.
If you could get me one of those posters, I'd actually like to put it in the background here.
Oh yeah. I got you. All I gotta do is walk down the street.
That'd be great. I really would want one.
All right.
That's one thing I give a lot of credit to the conservative wing of the American political spectrum is that we are good at taking the derogatory names and slangs that are thrown at us and turning them into really cool T-shirts and hats. So, let's keep it up.
That's a good T-shirt idea. Just take that and
make a T-shirt out of it and start wearing it. Fucking sell it on 1776.shop.
That's right.
People will get it. We'll get it in 1776 years after they pay for it. So. Going forward, where do you think we stand as far as the Department of Justice? Do you have faith in Kash Patel, in Bongino, in Ed Martin? I'm going to leave Pan Bomedy out of this one, just those three for right now. How do you feel about their commitment to getting to the bottom of what happened on January 6th?
I like what they have to say about what their plans are for January 6th. I understand that there is a lot to look at. These are guys that weren't working at the FBI during January 6th or after January 6th. So I know there's a lot to catch up.
Thank God
our case,
for them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. But now our case in general, there was 20,000 pages of transcripts, over 20,000 pages of transcripts. So nobody's going to be able to sift through 20,000 transcripts in a month or a couple of weeks, especially when you have a whole other workload of other things that you have to do.
Now, keep in mind, if you were to get a pardon, somebody in the shadows can legally make all that discovery go away. So I think that is the strategic reason to why you were commuted. They can't do that.
Yeah, and it makes a ton of sense. It really does. So, but the fact that I've seen them doing the interview lately, it seems like there's some things that they don't want to bother with. And then it seems like there's other things that they do want to bother with. And J6 is one of those things. And I don't think they have a choice. Trump, I believe, wants to get to the bottom of this, and he wants to exonerate himself because they've labeled him all sorts of things,
Yeah. And they're still doing it. I mean, I just posted a YouTube video and they put this disclaimer about how January 6th was a day where Donald Trump rallied his supporters to attempt a coup on the Capitol. I mean, just such false BS, but YouTube is still doing it, still up to it.
Right. Exactly. There goes that projection stuff again. They were saying that we were attempting a coup, but they were actually attempting the coup, and they started it with COVID, and they just carried it out after January 6th. And, I guess everything went as they wanted it to on January 6th, but not everything, I guess you could say. I was having this conversation with somebody else recently Nobody actually went there to overthrow the government. It's not what anybody wanted to do, but we were accused of it anyway. But like Enrique says, if we were planning on doing something like that, don't you think we would have showed up with weapons or something? I mean, don't you think Enrique would have ignored the court order for him not to be in D.C. and just showed up anyway? Yeah, but he didn't. And there was no plan to do any of that.
Literally in the Ministry of Self-Defense chat, he was telling people, do not bring guns. It is illegal. Mm-hmm. Don't bring plate carriers. Put cutting boards in there because it's illegal. He was telling them to do that. Of course, none of that was allowed to be entered into evidence on your behalf.
And I'm glad you mentioned the cutting boards. The one thing that we were all worried about, the reason why people were wearing the plate carriers, wasn't because we were worried about getting shot. It's because we were worried about getting stabbed by other Antifa, like Antifa. We were expecting Antifa to show up, and they didn't. Well, they did, but they showed up wearing Trump gear. As another topic for another day. But we were telling people in the chats, cutting boards will prevent stabbings, so they'll protect you from a stabbing. Now, this is one of the things that were overlooked again. Police officers don't carry knives. So that right there shows you we didn't show up that day with the intentions of fighting cops. We never did. Cops never crossed our mind. Like why would we wearing cutting boards to protect ourselves from knife attacks?
Yeah, last time I checked, they stopped funding bayonets for Capitol Police a long time ago. So we were good. Yeah, I mean, it's just I was talking with I think it was, who was it? It was believe it was Kelly Meggs, the Oath Keepers. You know how they had that famous video of all the Oath Keepers walking up to the Capitol building, and they all had their right hand on the person in front of them, the stack, the famous stack. And one of the first things when I retained an attorney said to me about that is that, he was really concerned with the media's narrative around this, and that, him being previous military, a stack is where you put your weak hand on the person in front of you. So your dominant hand can be ready to grab your sidearm as you're going forward. So the likelihood that all of these people, because they all had their right hand on the person in front of them, that would indicate, if it was a militarized tactic, that all of them were left-handed. And statistically speaking, that was impossible. So,
yeah, that's funny. How many times were you with a group of friends at a concert or whatever, and you're trying to get to the front, and you just don't want to lose your friends, because once you lose your friends in a big crowd, that's it. You're not seeing them until you meet at a big location.
No one's going to hear their cell phone.
Yeah, that's crazy, because I mean, I've been to so many concerts myself, and we all did the same thing. Just grab your right hand and put it on their backpack or their back collar, and well, I wasn't trying to overthrow the government at the rock concert. You know what I
mean? Yeah. Kid Rock, you're going down, dude.
Right. It's crazy. I mean,
it's ridiculous. Although I would not mind overthrowing an ICP concert. That sounds like a lot of fun.
You a fan of ICP?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't hate him. Don't hate him.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends who are juggalos and stuff.
Yeah. I don't mind ICP. It's the juggalos that drive me out of my fucking mind.
Some are all right. Some are, I feel you.
Yeah. Well, we could probably cure HPV in this country if we just eliminated that whole group, but
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, probably. Might solve unemployment too.
Yeah. Moving forward for you, Zach, what does it look like? What are you motivated to? Are you looking forward to just get this all over with and not talk about it, or do you have plans for the future as far as your voice in this situation is concerned?
Well, I had some plans, and they're kind of scattered right now, just because I don't know what my outlook is going to look like. I'm struggling to get my feet back on the ground right now, and I'm going to get there. I'm not worried about it. I think the pardon is coming right around the corner. Ed Martin's talking about it on X right now as we speak over the weekend, and I'm almost certain my application is on his desk too. In his little stack he shared, but hopefully President Trump comes through on it soon, and then that'll help get like a lot of things in place for me. I'll at least I'll be able to see the VA again, and it'll help me get rid of that terrorist label on paper that I still have, because I'm still technically considered that.
That's actually something that's very concerning to me, is that, okay, now we've got pardons, we're commuted. Let's get the guys that need pardons pardoned. But then where do we go from there to make sure that we are taken off of these lists that most of them, let's be honest, they operate in secret. They're kept in secret. We don't even know that we're on them. So are we going to be guaranteed that we're off these lists? And then that's where WeTheJ6ers.com is. How do we prevent any future administration from doing this to the American public again?
Yeah, and President Trump said that too. He wanted to prevent, this from ever happening again as well, but like I said, one of the things that I was hoping to do when I first got out, I thought I was going to get to pardon initially, but I was opening up a company right before I got arrested, a finance company, and I had all these professional licenses and whatnot. But because I'm a felon, I can't use any of them. So it's basically I spent almost 20 years acquiring licenses and degrees and stuff like that, so I could open up my own company. And now
sounds very domestic terroristic-y. If I were family man,
really.
married, pays taxes, gets the right license to open up a company, definitely sounds like somebody we need to be concerned about.
Right, exactly. I mean, and like I said, that's what I was getting at though. Once I get to pardon, some things will fall in place a little more for me because I won't have that title anymore. I won't be a felon essentially anymore. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm positive, hopeful that it's gonna happen pretty soon. And like I said, who knows? Maybe some bigger things would be in the works after that. I was considering running for office at one point, but I'm looking for somebody who has experience in managing like the campaigns and whatnot, and haven't met anybody who is willing to work with me on that yet. It's still kind of early for 2026.
As you know, I just dipped my feet in that pool, and it is even uglier than you think, my friend. It is that's ugly world in those politics, man.
Oh yeah. I believe it. Especially
majority of the people that will sign up to manage your campaign are going to take advantage of you right off the bat.
Oh yeah, I'll bet. Because the only time they have work is when they're managing a campaign. So,
and a lot of them are people that ran for office and fucking failed miserably, and it's their way to keep their foot in the door and have relevance in their own life, and their heart's in the wrong place. A lot of them,
absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the key things from the 2020 election, and even so the 2024 in Pennsylvania. A lot of districts flipped, and obviously it was probably due to a lot of the voter fraud and whatnot. But part of it was also lackadaisical people who were running for office, just like you said, who just wanted to, just stay relevant or make some money or something like that. And they're very winnable districts. I mean, the suburbs of Philly they were red for a really long time, and it was only recently that they started flipping to blue. And it's just like, why are they flipping blue? And one example is we have these limp-wristed, Republicans who are running, not putting any effort into actually trying to run a campaign and win. And we had the freaking district flipped. We end up with some Democrat who dumped a bunch of money in there and ended up winning because Republicans weren't motivated to show up and vote because they didn't believe in the person who was running. And that's the biggest problem.
It is that you are right, but it's also there is a lack of motivation on the conservative side of the wing. Mm-hmm. We can rally for general elections, and we fail to realize and show up that the local elections and the school board elections and the state elections are more important. And conservatives, when it's primary time, they sit it out every single time, or they'll vote for. They get the one rhino Republican that gets on his commercial every couple years with a fucking horse in the background, lasso in a fucking AR-15, waving the American flag, riding a bald eagle on fire, and I'm an American. And then you look at his voting record, and he votes with all these fucking Marxist pieces of trash in Capitol. But every couple years, he gets on there. I'm an American. Look at my horse. I've got boots on. And Tom and Donna will get up on primary. Oh, well, he seems like an American. He likes AR-15s. And they go and they vote for him. And
absolutely right.
But the Democrats now, they will walk on fucking lakes of fire at 4:00 in the morning during a hailstorm to go vote for whatever pink-haired Marxist piece of trash that wants to teach your kids transgender studies in the 3rd grade. They'll go vote for him. But conservatives will have something better to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you nailed it on there. That's definitely a huge portion of the issue. We're not getting quality candidates in because people aren't motivated. And one of the reasons they're not motivated either, though, is because they're worried about doxing. They're worried about their business being destroyed because that's what the left does. They have this warfare. They own the media. They for a while owned all the social medias. So, you have a good quality candidate maybe a person runs a business, they're real successful with their business, they try running for office. Now all of a sudden they're labeled a Nazi or this or that, and they're attacking their business and they're destroying everything or boycotting them, and it's just like, hey, they just want to run for office and help their community out, but now they're having their whole reputation destroyed. And I think conservatives see that because we actually work. Most conservatives actually have jobs and are successful. And they don't believe in any of that. That's why they're able to run social media and run the media like that, because they're not doing anything else except for tarnishing their opponents. So
yeah, it's an ugly game. It is a really, really ugly game, politics. That getting into it, it's even uglier than I thought. What I just, like I said, I barely got my feet wet working for a woman running for Congress down here in District 23. And, it's pretty shady. It's a pretty shady world. And so, it's something you better get used to if you want to get into it. But there is no more of an important and crucial time for Americans to roll up their fucking sleeves and get involved in the political process, because for too long we sat it out and we seen what happened. We seen the Marxists take over because we were asleep at the fucking wheel. And hopefully November 5th was an indication that is no longer the case. But we'll know in the primaries, Republicans. We'll know if John Thunes and fucking and whatever all the fucking rhino assholes, we'll know if they still have a job. The McCormins, we'll know if they still have a job after the primaries. Then you fell asleep at the wheel again, America, and I really hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'd like to see a lot more J6ers run. I think I think we've had our reputations tarnished so much over the last 4 years. At this point, I don't think there's anything they realistically could say about us. So I think more of us should run. It's like, go ahead.
I'd like to see J6ers stop tarnishing J6ers name, but I digress.
Mm.
It's it's the world of politics. It's an ugly world, and if you do it right, you can affect some beautiful change. And I think more often than not, now we see the ugliest versus the people that are in it for the right reasons, because the ones that do get it for the right reasons are called Nazis and bigots and fascists. Real quick, I want to bring up something that I found out yesterday, talking to a good friend of mine, and I believe yours as well, Lego Man, Rob Morris. Love that guy.
Yeah,
and he's a great dude. And I was talking to him, and he was able to come up with some information that I'm still trying to verify, although I have the highest regard and trust for Mr. Morris. There is a BOP employee that worked for the counterterrorism unit by the name of Joshua Klobe, Klobe, and apparently, allegedly, according to accusations, and these aren't coming from Rob, these are coming from other people, that this individual was the one and almost solely responsible for the counterterrorism unit of the BOP going after us while we served our time, monitoring us, holding our emails, holding our mail, having SIS fuck with us constantly. This one individual, Joshua Klobe, may be the person that we're going to be looking into, where we started filing some FOIA requests and all that. But Joshua Klobe, there was somebody, and this has been confirmed to me by employees of the BOP, there was somebody in the counterterrorism unit department in West Virginia, where Joshua Klobe is at, that was making calls to all the prisons we were at, trying to get us shots on Christmas time, so we would lose ability to have phone calls and visits on the holiday season. So that happened to me. It happened to Rob. It happened to a lot of other J6ers at the same time, being accused of talking to the media. And it might stem from this Joshua Klobe guy. Did you experience anything like that while you were serving your time, that you were extra scrutiny was added to you because of the J6 narrative?
Oh, yeah. From day one, the first day I was arrested, I remember when I was getting my emails, I would send out an email. The person wouldn't get it for 2-3 days most of the time. So trying to have like a conversation with somebody in emails, it was horrible. It would take a week for you to get a response from somebody half the time. And they did that to me 1.2. They tried breaking me. So they came up with a reason to take my phone privileges from me. I had lost them for like 90 days at one point, and they were literally hoping it would break my wife essentially, and hopes that like she would convince me to like take a deal or something like that. Because it was right around our anniversary and her birthday. So it was their key dates. My birthday was in June, her was in May, our anniversary was in May. So I think that the suspension happened, the phone suspension happened in like the end of April. So the whole 90 days through a whole birthday season and whatever, I wasn't able to even talk to my wife on the phone or say, happy anniversary or happy birthday or whatnot. And they were constantly playing the games out of the blue. Like we were under COVID restrictions my entire time at FDC Philly for the first year and a half. The day I left, they took all their COVID restrictions off and went back to business as usual. So like, yeah, literally. And it wasn't a coincidence, because I was saying in there from day one, I was like, all this stuff that they're doing in the name of COVID, they're doing to torment anybody who's in this building for January 6th is what it is. And I was let me see. It was that was the other thing. They probably did this to you too. They would lock the bottom tier of the jail. There's 2 floors on the blocks, and they would lock the bottom block in for a day, and then they would let the top out for a couple hours, and then they would lock them in and then switch it up, and they would do it to drive you nuts, because you never knew when you were going to be able to get out of your cell again, and you're just stuck in a cell usually with some crackhead, at least in FDC Philly, but that's just kind of like the little things they do. There's a lot of mental games that they would play. And it's probably coming from this Joshua Clove guy, but
because you're just what you said as far as the strategic planning of your anniversary, and wanting your wife to put her under pressure, to put you under pressure, all these type of mental manipulation. It's unconstitutional. They should not be allowed to do this to inflict you and put pressure on you to accept a plea or put aggravating factors on you during the process of your trial. And that's exactly what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be legal at all, and that's just one of those things I always wanted to, raise awareness to as well. I mean, because if you're taking somebody to trial because they committed a crime, you shouldn't need to do all that. You know what I mean? Like if you need to do all that, then you're cheating, and do you even have a case? And in their case, no, they didn't have cases. That's why they had to withhold, thousands of hours of videos. And that's why they had to doctor videos. They had to alter text messages and all kinds of things that they did throughout our
chronological time orders for messages when they were sent. They did that too.
Oh, yeah, they definitely did. I caught them on the stand. I always said that a couple times. I was like, this wasn't when this text was sent. You have that on your PowerPoint presentation, because they didn't show the actual phones. They withheld that from the jury because they created PowerPoint presentations of text messages, and they did that so that way they can alter the text and alter the time
and create the narrative around the text.
Right. And it would also hide who was replying to who. And that was huge, because they would say there would be one of their FBI informants that would say something weird in the chat, maybe trying to stir the pot on something, whether it was J6 related or not. And they were like, oh, well, this person said something that could be pertained as violent, and you didn't disagree, or you didn't tell that, you didn't condone this behavior. And I was just like, well, how do you know I didn't condone the behavior? You removed all the evidence of who replied to who. Like, there's no way to prove this. You created a PowerPoint presentation that strips out all the features of text messaging. So, like, and that's just part of their the little games that they played, and that's illegal too. You can't strip out the context of conversations. That's grounds for a case to be thrown out completely.
Sure, and it has so many times in the course of our history, but the same scenario thrown out because of the context.
Right, and it's deceptive to the jury, and that's legal terms for things that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to deceive the jury. You can show your case any way you see fit, but you can't deceive them. You can't lie. You can't alter evidence. And that's what they did the entire time. So,
and where is the consequences in our legislation that if it's proven that and it will be proven that these prosecutors coordinated with the Department of Justice to inflict these fake indictments and to change the narrative, if once that's proven, what's the consequences for them? What are they to fear for the next time that anyone decides to do this? That's the real question.
Exactly. And I think that's something that they really need to take serious. And I hope they are. I really do. I heard something about Kash Patel talking about having to go through a whole process of hiring new employees. I imagine if they're hiring new employees, they have plans of get rid of more employees. Hopefully they're those FBI agents that were acting aggressively, maliciously is the correct term, malicious prosecution against all 1,500 plus defendants. Yeah. And those people need to lose their jobs straight up. They have to.
Yeah. One of the narratives they did to me, if you do a Google search of my name, it says that I threatened an FBI agent investigating my case. Though I was charged and the charge was dropped, and a sentencing enhancement was put on me, and the sentencing enhancement was dropped because it all came out that the FBI was not true about the context and the narrative around that phone call. They didn't identify themselves as a law enforcement officer. In fact, they said on the phone at my job that they were a close family friend of mine, me leading to believe that I was being doxxed and it was Antifa because they hung up the phone. They shouldn't have even contacted me. They knew I had a lawyer. They knew this was my job. And they used that to spin a narrative that I threatened an FBI agent investigating my case. And that narrative was used to deny my bail twice because I had no criminal history. I was the perfect candidate for pretrial release, as most of us were. And that narrative that I threatened an FBI agent was used against me. I really, I'm not vindictive. I don't wish any ill will on anyone, but I do think that there needs to be consequences for that kind of behavior because it shouldn't be allowed to happen in the American judicial system.
I agree. And, it's funny. A lot of people don't notice, but I was actually initially granted bail. But I was granted bail by the Pennsylvania magistrate judge, and they used this thing called a de novo review, where then they, took my case out of PA and put it in front of Judge Kelly in DC. And then him without flinching, without any new evidence or anything, just denied bail. And then they went after that, they did the same thing to Ethan and Joe, who were actually out on bail at the time. I never got released when I got arrested. They put a stay on my bail. So I had to sit in jail while I waited for Judge Kelly to review my case. And these guys, they didn't do anything wrong. They're complying with all of their terms of release and everything. They had ankle bracelets and everything. And they got denied bail. And it was just, had their bail revoked, and they had to go surrender to prison. Jail.
I met with one pretrial release person from probation, the United States probation officer, because that's who makes a recommendation whether they believe you're eligible for pretrial release or not. I met with this person. They recommended me for pretrial release, that I was not a danger to the community and I was not a flight risk. And they read that, the judge read that, and then hit a button and silenced the court. Some very large woman from the back walks up with a single piece of paper and hands it to the judge. And the judge says, well, a second report was done. They said he's a threat to the community for threatening the FBI agent. What second report? I only met with one person. And it was just so blatantly bullshit and a lie. And they went against the United States probation office that recommended me for pretrial release. But they couldn't have that because they couldn't have me working with my lawyer because they knew that their case against me was bullshit. Sure, I was guilty of assault, but it ended there. They were trying to say that I overthrew the government and I was, all this crazy shit, and I wasn't arguing with the assault, but they charged me with aggravated battery with a deadly dangerous weapon causing serious bodily injury and harm. That's a serious felony, for a squirt of pepper spray at a group of officers that were beating the shit out of people previously. So, again, I don't condone my actions, and I say it because 1,500 other men and women are innocent. If you want to make me guilty, sure, you do that, but talk about all these men and women that are my brothers and sisters that are 100% innocent.
Yeah, and I would argue that you were innocent of that. You say you were guilty of it. I would argue you were innocent of it, and I think when the rest of those videos eventually ever come out, it'll show how that whole thing started, and it'll show how that they were aggressive. And I have videos already that, and I'm sure you do too, that show them attacking defenseless people. I mean, there was one video that was so egregious. I remember it's on my computer somewhere. There was a woman who was just holding up a sign. She was a little short woman. She walked up 2 little steps, held up a sign, and some Capitol police officer charged her like a bull with a riot shield. And she gets up again, walks back up to the steps, just stands there, defenseless woman, and he rams her again, full speed with the riot shield. And then the last time she gets up, before she even had the opportunity to walk back to the little spot she wanted to stand there with her sign, he bulldozed her again, and that got the attention of a lot of people in the area, and they got pissed, and rightfully so. I mean, like you're literally assaulting a woman for doing nothing but holding a sign up. She had every right to be where she was standing, and this cop just wanted to be a prick. And there was lots of cops there like that day.
Yeah. I watched an elderly woman get shoved to the ground as hard as he possibly could, who was trying to get away from the scene, and that's when I lost all respect for the Capitol Police in that moment. As a man, I just cannot sit there and watch another man attack a woman, especially an elderly woman who is obviously more vulnerable. And I lost my shit that day. And, I would go back again. Would I behave a little differently? Sure, because I would know what I know now, that it was all a setup. And I think that they were able to use people like my overreaction towards the police to indict innocent human beings and leave out the notion in the narrative and this true story that the police actually attacked us first was convenient as well, I guess, for them.
Right. They don't like the idea of us, saying that a lot of us were acting in self-defense. And then I would say
they try to take that argument away from me. They filed a motion that I couldn't use that argument. We didn't even say we were. But
that's another thing too. They told us we weren't allowed to argue so many different things, and it's just like, who the hell are you to tell me what I can and can't do for my own defense? Like, if I want to say unicorns flew down that day and brainwashed everybody to do it, I should be allowed to say so. But to sit here and say that like I can't say I acted in self-defense for something, that's absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. It's not for the judge to decide that when you're ordering a jury trial. It's the jury to decide. That's it.
Fortunately, the judge did agree with our motion to deny that motion. But the fact that they would even file it before we even said that this was going to be a basis of our defense, kind of telling.
Right. Oh, it definitely is. And it just shows a lot of times in a lot of cases, ours particularly, how much the judge was working with the prosecution rather, and it makes sense because if you look up the judge that we had, he was a Trump appointee, but trash slips through the cracks all the time. He's one of them. He was actually brought in from the same prosecutor's office that was prosecuting our case very recently, within like the last year or two of when he picked up our case. And his wife worked in Mayor Bowser's office. And now, for people who don't know, that was the mayor of DC. So our judge has direct ties to Mayor Bowser, who is trying to push this J6 narrative through. You
can't have a job in DC without being connected to the swamp. It's just not possible, Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, and that's a big problem too, because all the federal districts in our justice system, the federal districts cover large masses of ground. Now, DC, on the other hand, it's only the city of DC. And they should not have their own district. They should not have their own district at all. It's ripe for corruption. New York City and Los Angeles, neither one of those have their own districts. Like they have to share districts with a big area, and yet somehow DC, it's all right for DC to have their own district. Well, all the judges, everybody, they've all been to Georgetown. They're all friends with some politician, and this and that. Like, you don't ever want to get prosecuted in DC if the government wants you and you're in DC, you're losing. That's at least, especially if you're a conservative. So.
Well, and I think the extra added hard on for you guys was that you were Proud Boys, and the name speaks for itself. When you have a political party and movement that is trying to feminize men, sexualize children, and you have a group of men that are saying, no, I'm not okay with that. I'm proud to be a fucking man. And masculinity is not toxic. You're toxic for saying that. You've now become the public enemy number one as far as people standing in their way to push their nefarious agenda. And that's what Proud Boys represented. So, they were trying to get rid of you by any means necessary. January 6th was just a convenient way to do so. And I feel it's a threat that we're still under, no matter who the president is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, we're a target of the left, not because we're criminals or anything. We're just a target of the left because we stand in the way of their insane ideology.
Sure.
I always say to them, I was like, have you tried coming up with better policies? Maybe not shove transgenderism down, the throats of I don't know, elementary school kids. Like,
it's ridiculous.
I knew a lot of people in Arizona when I used to live out there. I knew some folks who did drag shows and stuff like that, but they weren't trying to read to kids. You know what I mean? Like, right. I don't care if you want to do drag shows. Cool. Like, what are you doing it to a kid for? Like, there's no purpose of it except for to just be a degenerate and try and mold their mind. And like
you can't tell me that dressing in drag is not a sexualized experience in the world of fetishism. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason for a kid to be involved in that.
Right.
You have every right to behave that way in your bedroom. Leave the fucking children out of it.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I've never seen a female stripper want to have, stripper story time. You know what I mean? Like they dress extremely provocative in front of these kids and everything like that. And, all of a sudden, because they're drag queens. It's supposed to be okay. Like,
Right.
absolutely not. No.
I think I can rest pretty confident speaking as just a Christian male, a proud American. I would have a problem with stripper fucking story.
I would
hour
too.
kids.
If they were
I don't
doing
care
that,
how
I'd
hot,
be just as mad.
how hot I thought she was. There's no need
Right.
to have that in front of children where men, our job is to protect them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, but nonetheless, you had a drag queen story hour organizer as one of your jurors, and that was a jury of your peers.
And he was the foreman of the jury too. On top of that,
yeah,
so he
right.
had
I
direct
forgot about
influence over all of the other jurors.
Did he do a drag queen story hour for the jurors back there? That's one thing.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they were all radical lefties.
It is DC.
Yeah, it is DC.
Good God, there is definitely something in the water there, ladies and gentlemen.
Really is.
We got to figure that one out. I have no idea.
It's like the black hole of the country. You know, it's just have these weird things crawling out of it all the time. Swamp creatures.
Even their gangsters are weird. It's just
yes. That's a topic of another day. So, I mean, yeah.
Spend some time on that one. I met some cool ones, but I met not some cool ones.
None of the prisoners like the DC crowd.
No,
none of the prisoners.
No,
and I mean, it didn't matter who you were. None of them.
And they know that. They know that about themselves. At least they're self-aware. So I'm going to give you, guys, I was telling everyone, WeTheJ6ers.com. We are forming an organization to get out there from coast to coast to tell our stories, and not just our stories. Our story is J6 is fucking over. The future is what we're talking about. We're telling our stories to show where it shows up in American society of corruption and prosecutorial misconduct in our justice system, so we can prevent it from happening to people in the future. The left, the right, black, white, gay, straight, I don't give a shit. The weaponization of the government should never be allowed to happen against political opponents in our society, and that's the mission that we're taking at WeTheJ6ers.com. Zach Rehl is a fucking perfect example of this. What happened to him and the seditious five and their trial should never be allowed to happen to American citizens again. So check out Zach's profile at WeTheJ6ers.com. Zach, I want to give you the last bit. Anything you want America to know, anything you're up to, where they can find you, and what you want them to know most importantly about January 6th and who you are as a person.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for having me on for one, and I want to thank everybody for their support. It's been a really hard battle, going through this. The beginning, the early days. I'm sure you remember the early days of being arrested yourself. We didn't have barely any support at all, but there was a small group of people that are out there doing everything they can to raise awareness. There's no one person to thank who helped. There's a huge group of people out there that have done so much to just raise awareness to what we all been through. And they're still fighting. And if you heard my side of the story today, I hope you spread the word a little bit more. Just keep talking to people. We got quite a few of us, well, 12 to be exact, 12 of us that still need pardons. Half of us are military vets and need our benefits back, so share this out, share it out, send it to somebody with a big page, big following, whatever. Hopefully something gets to President Trump's desk and he can, or at least to his ear, and he can pardon the rest of us. And we'll keep fighting. We're gonna keep making sure that this justice system isn't right for corruption in the future. So you heard some of the things I want to do. I might open my company up. I'm also running my own show as well. Real Time with Zach. Took off this last weekend for Memorial Day. Spent some time with my family, but I'll be back at it on Sunday. And other than that, you can follow me on X. I'm on X. I am on Facebook too, but I don't really post on there. So at Zach Rehl, ZACHREHL. That's where you find me on Twitter and X or whatever you can say. But other than that, it's just keep sharing out, keep helping us out any way you can. And I appreciate your support. Really do.
Absolutely, man. And thank you for your service to this nation. You are a veteran and you are a patriot. And I'm personally proud to be alongside you and call you a brother. You're a good man, and we need more men like you. And that's the problem I think the left has with you. So I definitely want one of those posters. I think we need to turn that into a shirt. If you can get one of those to me, I'll send you an address to send it to me. I think that we have a brother down here. I don't know, Pope.
Yes, I know Pope.
Pope. So Pope was having back surgery or something with his back years ago before I got locked up, and he was in a lot of pain, and he was in his hospital bed doing a selfie telegram video, and he was all fucked up and getting ready for surgery, and he looked at the camera and he goes, "If I don't make it out alive, I want you guys to remember this one thing: never stop trolling the left." I took that
Yes.
as a powerful proverb for me. And I look forward to doing so because listen, guys, you know, you leftists that hate watch, we love you secretly and we can't do this without you. We need your hate. So bring it on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, let Pope know I said what's up. But that sounds like something he said. That's awesome.
Good guy, man. Hey, love you, Zach, man. And, you know, don't stop speaking up and speaking out. And thank you for joining me and telling your side of the story. Check out Zach Rehl's personal page on WeTheJ6ers.com. The man has a lot to say and he's really good at saying it. So take a look at his stuff and thank you for being here, brother.
Hey, thanks again for having me on. Love you too, brother. And hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. You know, you always got a place to stay down here in Florida if you decide you want to move out of that cesspool. You know?
It's been crossing my mind. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of friends from Philly are moving down there. And it's
you could take the kid out of Philly, but you can't take the Philly out the kid, man. You'll be all right.
That's right. That's right.
And we do have a good cheesesteak place down here because everyone knows that Philly stole the original cheesesteak from Pittsburgh. So,
well, a lot of people migrate from Philly to Florida, so it's probably pretty close to authentic as it can be. So
there you go. Now we got our Permani brothers down here, so we're good.
That's right.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon,
bro.
man. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Zach Rehl. And Zach Rehl has been commuted, not pardoned yet. Zach Rehl is a veteran. Zach Rehl has honorably served this nation. Zach Rehl is not a domestic terrorist. That is the narrative that has been spun against him and a lot of my brothers and sisters from January 6th, including myself. And our mission is not to try to get you on our side of the political spectrum. Our job and our mission is to get you to see that what happened to us and American citizens under the Department of Justice under the previous administration was egregiously unconstitutional. And our hope and our mission going forward in the future is making sure that the Department of Justice cannot be weaponized against a political person or their constituents ever again, no matter what side of the political spectrum they are on. And that's what WeTheJ6ers.com is hoping to do. I would encourage everyone to follow us on X at WeTheJ6ers. We're just getting started. Our social medias are brand new. Our show is brand new. Our mission is brand new because, well, been in prison for the last couple of years. So now we're out and our voices are amplified for a certain amount of time. And if we can continue to not act like idiots, people will listen, hopefully. So that's what we hope to do. WeTheJ6ers.com. Give our page a follow. My new show, The American Rising, on the new Warboy Studio at The American Rise. You can follow me on X there too. We're going to be bringing the hard-hitting information and probably getting banned at some point. So the more you follow us, the better. And we can continue to keep pissing off the left because that's what we're here on this earth to do. God put us here for that reason, and we're going to keep doing it. Check out the website, WeTheJ6ers.com. Again, Zach Rehl, God bless that man, patriot, proud boy, true American, and a veteran that honorably served his nation. And like so many of our brothers and sisters, we need to work on that pardon because commutation is not enough. They need their benefits back. They put their life on the line for this nation. They deserve to have them. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I'm Barry Ramey, your host, co-founder of WeTheJ6ers.com, host of the new show, The American Rising, on the Warboy Studio. Thanks again. God bless you all. And we are out of here.